Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Halo: First Strike by Eric Nylund. This is the third book in the Halo series. I read the first book earlier this year, and I loved it. I loved reading this book. This was a book I read in January, and I had a blast with it. I thought Eric Nylund did an amazing job with it. And so I was very excited for the Halo series, but my excitement was tempered when I heard about the sequel, The Flood, which is basically a direct adaptation of the video game, the first Halo video game, and I've been told by just about everybody that this is the worst Halo book. And so I was very nervous going in, and I didn't particularly like the book. I didn't think it was awful, but it was just not enjoyable at all. And so I was really kind of deflated after reading it, but I figured at least let me give the next book a try, because everybody said that was the worst. Let's go with First Strike, see how First Strike is. And you know what? Darn it, I loved this book. I thought it was a great book. I had such a great time. And I'm realizing, I think book 2 was a fluke, because Eric Nylund's writing, and Eric Nylund did books 1 and 3, is just so superb. And they really bookend each other really well. It really is that, if you view it as like, if book 2 is the game, book 1 is the prequel to the game, and book 3 is the sequel to the game, and so that's why it forms like a weird trilogy that's really wonky, that has an amazing, it's like a sandwich where the bread is the most amazing bread that you've had, and the deli meat in the middle is just okay. That's how this is, because I think that First Strike is just a fantastic book. I have this, I know it's probably irking people, and it irks me that I don't have it in trade paperback. I have it in mass market. This was cheap at my local bookstore, and so I was like, this is an inexpensive way to go, because I could have bought a new trade paperback, but that would have been like $20 or $18, somewhere on there. This was like $2, so a very good deal. So First Strike is, as I mentioned, it takes place right after the events of the game, right after the events of the Flood. And, whereas the Flood, it felt like it was nonstop action, but none of the action was interesting. The First Strike is a lot of action, but it actually is written interestingly. I think it's because you really are focused on characters well. I think that the dialogue written here is really good, because there's a lot of characters together in the battle scenes, so the action is much more interesting. The stakes, I feel like, are much more interesting in this book than in The Flood. And I feel like, of course, I'm connected with the characters. I feel like I'm continuing on the storyline from The Fall of Reach. And, of course, we have Master Chief, John, who, of course, is an interesting character, but I'm talking about the characters like Dr. Halsey. I thought was very interesting in this book. I thought that Admiral Whitcomb in this book was very interesting to follow. And I thought that the questions that this book asks, questions about triaging, medical stuff for soldiers. And then also, there is a very classic Star Trek theme throughout the Star Trek TV shows and movies and books, which is, do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? And there's an opportunity in this book where they could sacrifice one character to basically save the universe. And the question is that righteous? Is that a just course of action? A lot of people would say yes, but this book asks, is that really the case? And it presents a compelling argument, and it provides an interesting perspective. And so it adds, it's a video game adaptation, and it's asking all these deep questions. And this is just further proof that media tie-in fiction can be just as good and valuable as original fiction, as original genre fiction, as original genre nonfiction, or regular fiction, non-genre fiction, that's how you say it, non-genre fiction, if it's told right, if it's handled well. And, this is a case where, it asks all these deep questions. This is very much a military science fiction book. If you had taken these themes that are in here, you could have written a, traditional military novel that's set during World War II or World War I and asked the same questions. But this book does it with a kind of science fiction point of view that ties into a video game. And so I just thought it was so interesting that it asks these deep questions that I think are so good. Also, there are themes in the first book which ask about how governments should deal with soldiers, how they should deal with training people for the military, should, they breed soldiers like they do in here, and, grow them from birth, or should it be an option, a choice? And for a lot of these guys, it really wasn't much of a choice. Technically, I guess for most of them, yes, but for a lot of them, no. And so it's just it just really is interesting and thought provoking that I just really enjoyed that. The book also just has some really cool visual action scenes. I can't picture the Covenant because I've never actually played the video game, but I could picture Reach as it's described here, and I could picture the space scenes. There's one space scene in particular towards the end of the book that I just thought was so visually dynamic and creative that it blew my mind, and so I just loved it. And so that I thought was just a terrific scene. So I had a blast with this book. I had been putting this book off because I was worried I wouldn't like it. Because I was late on one of my books from October, and then the way I accidentally scheduled November, I had 4 military science fiction books on the schedule. And I was not expecting that, and I was fully expecting to dislike this book because I was like, I'm going to get burnout, because this was the third of the 4 that I was going to read. And I liked the first one that I read, and I disliked the second one that I read. And so I was like, oh boy, I'm going to have burnout on Mill Sci-Fi. No, quite the opposite. This reinvigorated me. More excited to read more Mill Sci-Fi. Now, the question is, do I plan to continue on with the Halo series? One of my friends, close friends from high school, who I keep in loose contact with on Facebook. He and I don't connect much, but whenever I read a Halo book, he and I connect. And we were talking about this, and what he basically suggested is I should look up information about the games, because the next books don't, like, you never read the games like you did in The Flood. That was the one time that you read the story of the games in the books. So instead, he recommended I just look up what the games are, the events of the story, maybe watch some of the clips and stuff, and then continue on with the rest of the books. I have no intention of playing the games because I'm not a gamer, but and I won't really own a gaming system. But I do want to continue with the books. I believe the next book is another Eric Nylund book, and I fully trust Eric Nylund at this point to turn in another banger. And I'm hoping that I will be so invested in the characters and invested in the book series that when I get to non-Eric Nylund books, that even if I don't love necessarily an individual book, I'll still be propelled forward to read more, because I really want to read more of this. I really enjoyed this book. I had a blast with it. I thought that the character of Fred was interesting. I thought that the whole, trying to figure out not leaving a man behind discussion scenes were interesting. I thought that the space battles here were just really excellent. The whole stuff with Cortana was very interesting in this book. I was asking, I wonder what's up with Cortana. And so I really want to see where the series goes. So that is my thoughts on First Strike. I loved it. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I just had a blast with it. It was so good. If you've read First Strike, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Should I continue on? What are your favorite Halo books? And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.